On this episode of Doing the Most, we're going to talk about the 4 ways I recommend sourcing fermentable ingredients locally, and the 1 way I don't.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from mead to roast, bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.
Now granted, a lot of this advice is probably going to be more pertinent to my American audience than others around the world, but hopefully you can find some valuable information in here. Sourcing local ingredients to ferment for wine, cider, mead is sometimes a challenge, and a lot of times up to the seasonality of various ingredients, and sometimes if you want to do a big batch, it can be kind of expensive. And so over the years, I've found 4 places in my locality, Oklahoma City, that I like to source fermentables, and I'd like to talk about them here. And then at the end, we're going to talk about the 1 way I don't recommend sourcing ingredients locally. So let's hop on our tricycle, ride out into our community, and go pick up some groceries. This video is sponsored by Vevor, and we are riding their adult Tricycle. This is the white version of their trike. It's really easy to put together. It took me just a couple of hours. It's got this huge basket on the back that you can load up with your groceries, and it drives like a dream. Drive? Do you drive a trike? Ride a trike? It rides like a dream. Oklahoma's a plain state, so this trike on our flat roads is pretty easy to ride. They have got all sorts of stuff on their website. So if you're not interested in picking up a tricycle, there's definitely beer making gear, wine making gear, fruit presses, all sorts of stuff that you can use in your homebrewing arsenal. Take a look in the description for a discount on your order, no matter what you order from Vevor. Thank you so much to Vevor for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get out there and get some groceries. First up, Asian markets. Now, if you've tuned into the channel, you have heard me talk on and on about how much I love the local Asian market here in Oklahoma City, Super Cow Win. It's one of my favorite places to shop. They have great prices on just like regular groceries like produce and deli and dry goods, rice, things like that. But also there are some ways you can use an Asian market to your advantage if you're fermenting. For one thing, just like any grocery store, they're on a yearly rotation for their produce. And so fresh produce that comes in is going to be seasonal to wherever it came from. Typically, you're going to see stuff that you would see outside of your average neighborhood grocery store, where typically they would have stuff like apples, bananas, pears, strawberries, oranges. You might see that at the Asian market, but at least in Oklahoma City, our Asian market caters toward our Asian community here, folks who are restaurateurs or families who have ended up settling here. So a lot of times the fruits and jams and vegetables, they're going to be things that are native to a different country than our own. So that means you might have access to things you're not going to typically run into, like passion fruit and durian and lychee and guava and rambutan. So check out your local Asian market. You might be surprised by some of the stuff that you might be able to ferment. Another thing I love about Super Cow Win is they have a huge spice and tea section. So if you like making tea wines, or if you like adding different kinds of teas to up the tannin level in your wines or meads or ciders, you should check out your local Asian market for their tea section alone, because they have such a variety and you can buy in bulk. It's super inexpensive and super accessible and a lot of fun to play around with those various different flavors. Next up, Hispanic and Latino markets in Oklahoma City. That tends to be our Mexican markets. One thing I love about the Mexican markets here in Oklahoma City is that the produce is generally relatively inexpensive, so you can get more for less money. Meaning if you're trying to ferment something like cactus fruit, you might be able to get more for less money at your local Mexican market versus going to somewhere like a Walmart, where you may be able to find it, but it might be more expensive. Another thing I love about the Mexican markets here in Oklahoma City is their cheap and plentiful spices. The one up the road here, where I took some of the video for this project, has like multiple spice sections, like maybe 20 to 30% of their stores imported spices that are pretty inexpensive. And so it's definitely like a life hack, but not even just stuff for fermenting. Like if you're just trying to fill up your pantry, go check out your local Mexican market. You might be able to save a ton of money on herbs and spices. And lastly, check out their candy section, because some of these markets have huge candy sections, meaning if you're into that sort of thing, man-made mead, you might find some fun candy there to ferment. Next up, local grocers. We are actually regular customers of our local grocery store. They actually offer a delivery service, so you might check yours in your area and see if they do. But we have our groceries hand-selected every Wednesday and Thursday and then delivered on Fridays, which is pretty convenient to us, and we get to support a local company. And of course, you're also supporting your local farm community, because a lot of the stuff will come from within your state. Most of our produce that we get comes from around the state of Oklahoma and is distributed into Oklahoma City and to us by our local grocer, which is awesome. And that is the main thing I want to talk about with a local grocery store. While some of the prices of buying stuff might be higher than you would see in another mass market grocery store, your local grocers are connectors. They know the farmers, they know the apiaries. And so if you're trying to buy in bulk honey, bulk seasonal fruit, talk to that local grocer and see if they can connect you or set up a deal for you so you can buy in bulk and maybe just have it delivered directly to your door. We love our local grocery store. We are delighted that the owner of the grocery store is actually one of our neighbors and friends, and it's just a great way to feel super connected to your local community, and it's right up the street. So we're very lucky that there's not really an excuse for us not to be customers. And number 4 on my list is restaurant stores. And the one we typically go to is called the Chef Store. It's in South Oklahoma City, and they sell everything in bulk. And I mean everything in bulk. There's not much variety, but if you need 50 pounds of blueberries or 40 pounds of mangoes or pounds and pounds of honey or a gallon of lime juice, you can get it at your local restaurant store. And ours doesn't even require a membership. Any member of the public can just walk in and get wholesale restaurant pricing. The freezer section usually has huge bags of fruit, 5 to 10 pound bags of fruit that's frozen at the peak of freshness and ready to be thawed and fermented. I've done this multiple times at our Chef Store, just loaded up a cart with 45, 50 pounds of blueberries and walked out happy to go home and ferment them. And generally, you're saving money versus going to a store like a Walmart or Costco. Now, there is one word of warning here. If you are looking to buy honey, be careful, read the packaging, make sure you're getting actual honey. One of the things they do sell is a honey sauce or honey syrup, which looks really cheap in bulk, but is typically just some sort of flavored syrup to taste like honey. Now, our restaurant store does sell bulk honey. It comes in at about $3.73 per pound. It's imported honey, typically from Ukraine. I've used it to make melamels and it works out just fine, but a word of warning, read the label. Restaurant stores, great hack if you're looking for bulk produce though, and take a look at their gear and equipment while you're there, because they sell to restaurants, and so they're typically inexpensively priced pots and pans and citrus squeezers and stuff like that. You might end up finding something you didn't know you needed at your local restaurant store. And lastly, my unpopular opinion, I don't recommend farmers markets for fermentation. Now, I will say we go to our farmers markets. We've got a really thriving culture of farmers markets here in Oklahoma City. We're very fortunate in that way. And if you're looking for, prepared stuff, right? Like hot sauces, pickled vegetables, candles, things like that, farmers market's a great place for that. If you're looking for gifts for family for Christmas, great place for that. But if you're looking for bulk produce, like say you want to buy a bunch of strawberries, farmers market's not a great place for that. They're probably going to be overpriced, because that's kind of culturally what happens at a farmer's market. The price goes up because you're having a kind of boutique experience. But also the fruits and vegetables at the farmer's market are beautiful. They're hand selected to be pretty photogenic fruit, and for fermentation, that's not really what we need. I'm happy to get bulk, ugly frozen fruit that I can dump into a bucket. So don't pay more for more aesthetically pleasing fruit at a farmer's market when you can go to some place like a Mexican market or a restaurant store and get it for cheaper. And honey at farmer's markets is typically way overpriced. I'm talking 10 $20 a pound. I would never pay prices like that. The cheapest price I've seen for honey is about $90 a gallon at a farmer's market in Dallas. Still quite a bit for what was essentially Texas wildflower honey. It's just not the right place to buy honey you're gonna ferment, usually. Now, you may be able to get connected to an apiary through your farmer's market and negotiate some less expensive bulk pricing, but typically not, because running an apiary is expensive. Being at a farmer's market, paying for booth space is expensive, and so they have to recoup those costs. And so just not a place I recommend to go, really at all, for wine or mead making stuff. And on top of those caveats, generally you're working against seasonality and you're working against growing zones because a lot of this stuff is local. So variety is not really going to be a thing at farmers markets. You're gonna see booth to booth a lot of the same fruits and vegetables. And so there's not really an advantage versus going to a grocery store or a bulk store and just buying whatever you want to ferment there. However, we do have a lot of fun going to the farmer's market, and I do buy stuff there, just not stuff I'm going to ferment. So I'm curious, what are your recommendations for buying fermentables locally? Drop those recommendations down in the comments. I'm always looking for extra places I can add to my list when I'm looking for stuff to ferment, especially local sources of fruit and honey. So let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming content here on the Doing the Most Brewing channel. And until next time, happy brewing and cheers. I don't have a drink handy. Cheers.